It all started on what seemed like an ordinary flight. A teenage girl quietly boarded the plane, dressed in a simple sweatshirt with the word university across the front. She looked a little out of place among the polished business travelers in first class, but what happened next shocked everyone on board. A flight attendant, confident and elegant in her uniform, locked eyes with the girl and seemed instantly annoyed. Without asking questions, she began criticizing her appearance and questioning whether she belonged in that section. Despite the girl showing her valid ticket, the attendant continued to belittle her loudly enough for passengers to hear until finally, she kicked her out of the seat and told her to move back. The girl, holding back tears, gathered her things and stood in the aisle, humiliated and unsure of what to do next. Some passengers watched silently, while others exchanged awkward glances. No one stepped in. Then, just as the situation reached its lowest point, the cabin curtain opened and in walked a sharply dressed man with a calm but powerful presence. The moment their eyes met, everything changed. Because that wasn't just any man. It was her father. And what happened next left the entire plane stunned. The man paused for a second, scanning the scene. His eyes landed on the flight attendant, then moved to his daughter still standing in the aisle, red-faced and holding back tears. A few passengers whispered among themselves, clearly sensing the shift in energy. No one yet knew who he was. But there was something about his presence, calm, confident, commanding, that made people sit up straighter. The flight attendant tried to regain her composure, but her smile faltered as she realized something wasn't right. Moments before this, the girl had been traveling alone, quietly making her way to visit her father after months apart. She wasn't wearing anything flashy, and she didn't try to draw attention. But the flight attendant had judged her too quickly, assuming she didn't belong based solely on her clothes and age. She never expected the man who just walked in to be connected to the girl in any way. What most people didn't know was that her father wasn't just any businessman. He was a billionaire CEO, known for keeping a low profile and never flaunting his wealth. And now, here he was, watching his daughter being treated like she was invisible. But he wasn't the type to cause a scene, at least, not yet. He walked slowly down the aisle, every step measured, his expression unreadable. The flight attendant stepped aside, nervously brushing her skirt and attempting a polite smile. "Sir, can I help you find your seat?" she asked, voice slightly shaky. He didn't answer. Instead, he stopped beside his daughter and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. The girl gave a small nod, still trying to hold herself together. The silence that followed was thick with tension. A few passengers had begun recording discreetly, sensing something unusual was unfolding in the cockpit. A murmur passed between the pilots as the first officer leaned out to see what the delay was. Meanwhile, another flight attendant toward the back whispered to a colleague, "Isn't that Daniel Wexler, the tech billionaire?" Word spread fast, but the lead flight attendant remained unaware of who she had just insulted. She stayed focused on maintaining control, insisting the girl didn't have the right seat. Pointing to a tablet in her hand, Daniel didn't raise his voice. Instead, he turned to her with a calm but firm tone. "I believe there's been a mistake," he said. But beneath his polite words, there was weight, the kind that comes from power and quiet fury. The lead flight attendant's smile stiffened. "Sir, I understand there may be some confusion, but this passenger was not listed in our system for business class." She held up her tablet again, as if the screen alone could justify everything that had just happened. Daniel's eyes didn't leave hers. "And yet," he said calmly, "her seat was booked by my office through a corporate account. First row, window." His voice was still low, but firm enough that even the nearby passengers stopped pretending not to listen. The girl glanced down, clutching her backpack tighter, still too embarrassed to speak. She didn't need the spotlight. She just wanted the moment to be over. But Daniel wasn't ready to let it slide at this time. One of the junior flight attendants from the back quietly approached, eyes wide with recognition. She whispered something into the lead's ear, and color drained from the woman's face. Still, she tried to recover. "I wasn't informed of any VIP bookings," she muttered, her voice losing its edge. But Daniel had already pulled out his phone. He wasn't threatening, just factual, tapping through his emails. "Would you like me to call the airline CEO, or should we clear this up now?" he asked. The air turned electric. Everyone was waiting. Before the flight attendant could respond, a voice crackled over the cabin speaker. "Attention crew, please report to the flight deck immediately." The tone was calm, but carried an edge of urgency. The lead attendant hesitated, clearly torn between staying and saving face or answering the call. She gave Daniel a tight nod and quickly walked toward the cockpit, heels clicking with purpose. Daniel watched her leave, then turned to his daughter. "Come on," he said quietly, guiding her toward the original seat. She hesitated but followed, sliding into the window seat she was forced out of earlier. Passengers nearby exchanged glances, some in disbelief, others with quiet approval. But before things could settle, the curtain at the front of the cabin rustled again. A sharply dressed man with a gold airline pin on his lapel stepped through. It was the airline's regional director, and his sudden presence added a new layer of tension. "Mr. Wexler," he said, locking eyes with Daniel. "We need to speak privately right away." Daniel raised an eyebrow but stood. The girl watched her father disappear behind the curtain with the director, confused and uneasy. What she didn't know, what no one did, was that this wasn't just about a seat anymore. Something bigger was brewing inside the front cabin. Behind the drawn curtain, the airline director leaned in close to Daniel, his voice low. "Mr. Wexler, I owe you an apology. We just discovered a serious system error. Your daughter's name was flagged and downgraded because of a glitch that mislabeled her as a no-show from a past flight." He looked genuinely uneasy. "This isn't just a customer service mistake, it's a breach we're investigating." Daniel listened silently, jaw tight. "And the flight attendant? Allah?" he asked. The director hesitated. "She acted on the system data, but the way she handled it, that's on her." Daniel didn't respond right away. Then he said, "I don't care about an apology. Fix it. Make sure she never treats another passenger like that again, regardless of their last name." Back in the cabin, the lead flight attendant returned to her post, her face pale. She didn't speak a word, just stood quietly as Daniel reappeared and sat next to his daughter. The atmosphere had shifted, calmer but heavier, just as the engines roared and the plane began taxiing. Daniel leaned over to his daughter and said, "Next time, you're flying private again." But then came the twist. The girl shook her head and smiled faintly. "No, I needed this." People show who they really are when they think no one's watching. As the plane lifted into the sky, the tension slowly faded. Daniel looked over at his daughter, proud, not just because she stayed calm through it all, but because she'd seen something deeper. Not everyone knew who she was, and that was exactly the point. She hadn't wanted special treatment, just fairness. And now, she understood more than ever what her father had always told her. Respect isn't something you demand, it's something you give, no matter who's watching. The airline later issued a formal apology, and the lead flight attendant was quietly reassigned. Daniel never posted about the incident or made a public statement. He didn't need to. But word of what happened spread quietly among staff and executives, serving as a powerful reminder that judgment based on appearance can carry real consequences. The girl, now back at school, told no one about the incident. She didn't want the attention, What stayed with her most wasn't the embarrassment or even the twist of her billionaire father stepping in. It was the silence of the other passengers and the courage it takes to speak up. Because sometimes the real story isn't about wealth or power, but the way people choose to treat each other when they think no one important is looking.